Well, greetings and thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Dr. Antonio Mexico, and I'll be providing you with a lesson. The name of the lesson is titled Seeing Ourselves, Seeing One Another, an activity on diversity and oneness. This is intended to provide you with a short slam lesson on how to incorporate social justice oriented activities into your classroom. Now, for this activity, the instructor will just need a couple of things. One is a small mirror, like a makeup mirror, something like this. I've purchased these in bundle packs on Amazon. They're very affordable, not too much at all. I think they're just plastic. The second thing is a portion of clay. This is a clay that I also purchased in a bundle pack on Amazon. Relatively cheap. This is like a clay for children that dries with the air, so it doesn't need to be placed in an oven or anything to harden. It's also like hypoallergenic and things like that, so it won't create any issues in the classroom. I also, in order to recommend if you want to save cost and let's say not purchase the mirrors, you can also just ask students to use their cellular phone or another device that has a camera setting on it where they have a selfie mode on that device. Okay, so you can use that in lieu of the mirrors if you would like. Okay, so for the activity, what I'll do is I'll distribute the clay and the mirrors prior to beginning the lesson, and just ask the students to go ahead and just hold on to those. They don't need to use them or take them out at this point until they're instructed to do so. Okay. Now, I spend about 15 minutes introducing the concepts of diversity and oneness from a multicultural perspective. And during this portion in the lesson, I introduce the following topics to students. One, the concept of Ubuntu, which is a South African philosophy of I am because we are. The second is a Mayan philosophy, a Mayan greeting actually, called Lakech. And it's a philosophy that means I am another you. And the third is a word, another greeting in Hebrew, shalom, which means peace be with you. Okay. Now, the instructor should explain that these perspectives all recognize the individuality of each person, but focuses on the interrelated structure of relationships. So in essence, that we are responsible, all right, for one another. These three perspectives each promote diversity and recognize that healthy human relationships must be formed if we are all to thrive and function as a society. Now, as a result, these phrases are symbolic of a deeper connection between people and society and shape the way individuals interact with one another. Okay. The instructor should then spend about 25 to 30 minutes explaining Erikson's psychosocial theory, specifically focusing on stage 6, which is intimacy versus isolation, and symbolic interactionism theory. Now, during this portion of the lesson, students should be introduced to these theories and their connections to social justice. The instructor should highlight that during stage 6 of Erikson's theory, people are learning to form healthy and meaningful relationships with others. Their worldview, including their previous experiences, trauma, and social interactions, shape the way they view others. So this worldview forms symbolic cognitive schemas that in turn impact their behavior towards others. These schemas are exchanged through language and impact the way we establish and maintain relationships with others. So these relationships can serve to promote social justice or impede it. For this reason, we want to be aware of the lenses in which we see ourselves, as well as in the lenses in which we see others. So the instructor then asks students to take out their clay and to really just form any animal they would like, any sort of animal. It doesn't matter what it is, a duck, a turtle. I've had students form a snake, if they just want to keep it simple, whatever it is they would like. And I give the students about 10 to 15 minutes to form that animal. And I usually play some soft or soothing music in the background. Now, if you are running short on time, let's say you're doing this in a tight lesson, what I may do is before I start the lesson, I'll ask students to open their clay and just start forming their creature while I'm explaining the theoretical orientations. That's okay too. You're welcome to do that, okay, if it saves you time. Now, after students have formed their animals from the clay, I ask students to hold the clay, their creations up so that other students can see what they've formed. I allow students time to gaze upon each other's work and to compliment one another. And now I ask students to look closely at their creation. So examine those pieces of clay carefully. Ask students to explain the lines of their examine the lines of their creation closely And then I asked them to look even more closely at the surface of the clay. I then asked students, what do they see? Some students may share that they see fingerprints, right, on the surface of their clay creation. If they don't notice this, that's okay. I may ask them, look very closely. Do you see your fingerprints imprinted upon your little clay creation? The instructor then should explain that some Native American tribes believe that the great creator breathed life into human beings and that the fingerprints on their hands are the patterns of the wind left behind by their creator. The instructor can also highlight that in the Christian story of creation, God formed man from dust and earth and breathed life into him. These cultures, though very different, both recognize that human beings are created in diversity, but still connected to a higher power. If each student made a dozen animals during class, none of them would look the same, yet all of them would share a common trait, that the print of their creator remains on each of them. Each creation will look different, but they will all have held the same esteem. The instructor should encourage students to consider that no matter their faith background, if any, of their cultural differences, social justice promotes the dignity of the individuality of every person, and calls for us to form meaningful and healthy relationships with those who are different from us. I then tell students that they can keep their little clay creations as a reminder of diversity and oneness. So I said, those are just yours to keep. Many students go on later and they say they put those in their cubicles at work, or they kept them on their desk, or whatever the case was. So then for the second part of the activity, I asked students to take out that mirror, okay, that I provided them, or they can go ahead and take out their cell phone or the other device and put their camera in selfie mode, okay, so they can see themselves. Now, I asked students to closely examine their own facial features. Take a moment, I tell the students, to look at the shape of your colors of your eyes, the contours of your nose, the shade of your skin, the length of your eyelashes. I ask students to continually and closely examine themselves, just like they examine their clay creation. And then I'm going to ask them to listen to this following statement that I'm going to read to them while they continue to examine themselves closely, okay? And I read this statement to them. You are a reflection of the diversity that is to be celebrated and honored in the world. You are unique. This uniqueness includes your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your ability, your size, your religion, your citizenship, and your talents. You are never supposed to be created exactly the same as everyone else. Yet, you deserve to be treated with the same dignity and respect as the person next to you. You are beautiful. You are diverse. You are different from anyone who has ever walked this earth or whoever will. You are lovable and therefore capable of loving others. I then ask students to go ahead and, put their mirrors down or go ahead and turn off their devices. And I explain to students that in order to promote social justice and to seek out diverse relationships with others, we must be aware of how we view ourselves first. Just like the tenets of symbolic interactionalism theory, we must be acutely aware of how our worldviews shape the interactions we have with others. I then remind students that we are responsible for continuing to examine in our own perception of ourselves if we are to assist in promoting social justice in our interactions with others. At that point, I then conclude the lesson. Sometimes I will ask students to debrief, to share some thoughts about how they may have connected or what concepts resonated with them during the activity, and then I move on to another stage in the lesson. So I hope you found this helpful. Thank you again for tuning in. Take care.